Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 92 of the Hardly Millennial podcast, where we are young, dumb, and full of
opinions.
Ladies and gentlemen. 92. We're rounding that 100 mark.
We're getting
man.
there, man. We're almost there.
We're almost there. It's exciting. Exciting. The fact that we've done this for almost 100 days is almost a little surreal.
Well, we knew we would get to this point.
We knew we would,
but being here is definitely kind of crazy.
Well, it's one of those things, and we've talked about it a little bit before, where podcasting has become just such a part of our daily routine anymore that it's just like, oh yeah, well, of course we're almost at 100 days. It's just, that's what we do every day.
What's crazier, honestly, to me, is that it's only 100. Like,
it feels
like we've been
longer.
doing this for like a year now.
Yeah.
And no, just over 3 months.
Yeah, damn.
Chugging along.
Really excited to see where we are February 9th, man, of 2020.
Oh, well, we have a lot in store.
We do have
it's
a lot in store.
It's just a matter of getting it together.
I think after the year mark, I think once we are getting up to that year mark, we're going to be kind of, the entire channel, I think, is going to be in like a more plateaued state. You know what I mean?
Yeah, once we get all the projects up that we want.
Yeah, but I mean, just as far as even deciding at that point, like how we want to go about the projects, what projects we're doing that are going to be consistent at the time.
Well, so far, all we've really mastered is podcasting.
Hey, that's still mastering something.
We did. We've done pretty good with it. Oh, Harley's here with us today. The local millennial cat. No, but we've done good with the podcasting, I think. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, we want to have a good handful of different things going on.
Yeah.
So we'll get good at each of those things. It just takes a while.
It's been fun, though.
We've been busy at our other jobs, too.
Yes, that's
has been taking time away.
Yes, for sure. And that's one thing I think, it does good for us to keep in mind, because the day that we put out our podcast about just kind of the update that ended up being the Hardly Millennial update, right?
Yeah.
Was that Kyle texted me the next day. Shout out to you, Kyle, once again.
Love Kyle. How's it going, man?
And and he was telling me too, almost just kind of reassuring, through the mishaps we've had through this, where he was like, remember, dude, when you watch people like posting videos every day on YouTube and vlogging every day and stuff like that, like those are people where that's their job.
That's true.
They don't have another job on the side that they're doing. That's what they do now,
Right.
And I think that's sometimes something we like lose sight of, like, oh yeah, well, I have a day job. It's like, don't hate me too much, guys.
Well, I mean, from the beginning, we've tried to look at it as if we already have, 10,000 followers.
Absolutely.
And I try to put out that quality from the beginning. But I don't want to say it's a rude awakening when you start doing it, but it definitely puts into perspective how much work it is to run a YouTube channel, like to our standards, the way that we feel it should be run.
Yes.
I totally understand now why people start a YouTube channel and then will just like go rogue for a few months. Or only put out content once a week. Or I used to really think like, man, they must just not care that much about their channel, especially if they have a couple thousand, like 2,000 followers, I'm like, why don't you push, And now I realize, well, they're teachers and doctors and lawyers, like they do shit on the outside.
That's true. A lot of YouTubers do. I mean, there are people out there who, because we live in a day and age now where people, we thought this when we were older, but kids now, are saying, I want to be a YouTuber when I grow up, right? And that's not a far-fetched thing to think. I mean, it's the whole reason why, we're in this.
It's the new small business.
Yeah, absolutely. But what I think people don't understand when they watch a lot of these YouTubers that they follow and they like is the ones out there who just do YouTube as a job. That's a very small percentage of the YouTube content creators community, you know, because you have a lot of YouTube channels out there that, just as you said, it could be a doctor, analyzing or perfect one that we've watched a few times, the lawyer that watches like court scenes in movies.
Yeah, man.
And then says, what was done right, what was done incorrect.
I love that guy.
This would
He's
never
awesome.
happen. Yeah, it's really fun to watch. But obviously, this guy is a lawyer. When he's not making YouTube channels. And a lot of people out there, like Justin, who follows a lot of like animal owners, people specialize in certain animals. It's like, yeah, they post stuff on YouTube, but they have jobs, they have outside jobs. That's how they're able to get all this stuff. It's not all just like sponsors. There's only so many people that can sponsor, certain content.
Yeah, it's a very small portion of people who are able to do it full time, and just focus on that. I mean, that's where we all want to get to, though, right?
That's where we all want to get to. It's a journey.
If that fucking bottle pops one more time, I swear, it's bugging the shit out of me. We have like this bottle on the table with water in it, and it keeps just magically popping.
It's true, it does.
I'm gonna throw it off the table if it does it again.
No, it's my water. Don't do that. I need this. I need to stay hydrated.
Well, keep it quiet.
Shut the fuck up, bottle. Jeez. So did you know, I just read this today, did you know Jeff Bezos is dipping his hand in the space industry?
Yeah, well, he has been for a while.
Has he?
Yeah.
This is the first I've heard of it. What has he done in the past?
The same company. What's it called? It's not Virgin. It's what's the company name that you just read about? I was just outside reading
Amazon.
about it also.
Amazon.
I know. What's his moon company? What's the...
Oh.
It literally says it in the... I forget the name of it.
This is a very small article, and it does not say.
There's Virgin, there's SpaceX, and then there's his. Anyway, yeah, he wants to go to the moon. But he's been in the space gig for a little while, though. He's one of the three dudes who's been doing it. There's Elon Musk, there's Bronson, who has Virgin, Richard Bronson, and then there's Bezos, and he has
whatever his thing is.
Fucking thing. Well, I don't know why I can't remember it.
I don't know.
It's very popular.
Like I said, this doesn't say what that company is, but it did.
He just showed off a lunar lander today,
yeah,
a moon lander.
That's exactly what I just read today. Yeah, and like I said, this is the first I've heard of him even being into the whole space thing in general.
Oh yeah, no, he wants to launch. I think 2024 is when he's planning.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and they have,
he wouldn't be able to do it a few years from now if he had just started.
Yeah,
he's been doing it for a few years already.
Well, I didn't know if it was something he was doing like behind shut doors, wasn't like, advertising or telling people about, and then because in this article too, it talks about like the press conference where he revealed it out. It wasn't even like live streamed or anything like that. It was a very private, intimate press conference, and then you put out the footage later. So I thought it was like one of those kind of things.
Well, I know one of his philosophies is that big things start small. Mm-hmm. He's very much that kind of minded person. So
Blue Origin.
Blue Origin.
Thank is the company name.
Thank you. Oh, bugging the shit out of me.
Yeah, I had to
so
look
there
it
was
up.
kind of an untold. There was a little bit of a race between Blue Origin, Virgin, and SpaceX for like orbital. When you go visit places, you do tourism for tourism in space. So
Isn't
they wanted
Bronson
to.
kind of like leading that?
He's kicking
right
ass
now?
in it. He has a pretty good track record.
Because he has like a
believe it or not.
spaceport he's building in like New Mexico right now, isn't he? And he's like designed the plane.
So I would say, as far as the industry leader of space, it's probably still SpaceX, just because they already have a lot of the industry needed. They already have the platforms. They already have the rockets. They have actually very special, like super heavy rockets, I think is what they call them, that they actually developed that only they use. They also developed the like when the rockets re-enter the orbit. Elon Musk figured out, well, he didn't figure out, but his scientists figured out how to land it on a platform.
Yeah.
But that platform can also be floating out in the ocean. He failed a shit ton of times, but he was able to actually make a rocket land on a platform that was floating in the ocean.
That's fucking crazy.
So he figured out basically how to recycle rockets. So yeah, Elon Musk, SpaceX, I would say that they're definitely the industry leaders.
Yeah.
But Virgin has an awesome record, dude. He's kicking ass.
Yeah.
He had one that blew up, and I think a test pilot died, and that was kind of a big deal. And he kind of slowed down for a while,
Right.
and that kind of allowed SpaceX to push ahead a little. I do think there was an incident like that where one of his test pilots died.
Well, I had misspoken earlier. It's not that Bronson's leading in like space tourism, but he's leading in like a faster way of travel right now, because that's, I think, what the whole thing in New Mexico is, the spaceport, where it's this plane that will take you literally to like the lowest level of the atmosphere and just kind of float there basically. And then so it was like you can get from here to England in like 4 hours or some shit like that.
So you would call that more like avionics?
Yeah. Okay.
Which would be more like airplanes and shit.
Right.
Except his airplanes, like you said, don't necessarily use as much engine. They use a lot more of going up and coming down and riding those currents.
Yeah.
So yes, I would agree.
So I think he's
Virgin
the one
is
leading
much
all
more
that kind of
avionics leader.
Yeah.
And SpaceX is much more the
Like actual interstellar travel.
rocket ship leader. SpaceX is very focused on Mars. They're almost, in my opinion, tunnel visioned on it, but whatever.
I think you're right in saying that.
He insists on going to Mars, which is cool. So it seems that Bezos is not trying to compete to race to get to Mars.
But trying to get us on the moon again.
Yeah, Bezos is very interested in the moon and building a moon base and that kind of, which is cool.
Yeah.
So you have 3 different billionaires all kind of in the same industry, but
focused
going
on
after different things.
Which I think is actually the best way to do it, really.
Well, why would they compete with each other?
Yeah,
when they can all make money in different things.
And then it's funny because then you have NASA that's just kind of there anymore.
Well, NASA is the government entity for space. So NASA doesn't actually launch any of its own rockets anymore.
Right.
We stopped doing that a few years back. Now NASA astronauts were going up with Russian astronauts when the Russians would launch.
Yeah.
I personally think that NASA has a lot of interest in companies like SpaceX and Virgin and Blue Origin because it brings the space industry back to America.
Yeah.
We can launch back from our platforms in New Mexico and Florida, things like that. But it takes all the expense away from the government. It privatizes it. And America is super duper into privatizing. It's what we're all about. We don't like government in our shit owning stuff.
Right.
So it's actually genius. They subsidize these companies to be able to bring the industry back home.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's exactly what Bezos is doing with this Blue Origin lunar lander.
Yeah.
Because it's stated in this article that he's working with NASA about getting that lunar lander to the moon.
Yes.
So
NASA still is a funded entity. It still gets taxpayer dollars, and they still have scientists, and they still have laboratories and their launch pads. Like all the industry that they built is still there, and the people still work for it. They just don't actively launch their own rockets into space anymore.
Right.
So they have these companies who kind of do that for them. But those scientists still work with these companies. They share knowledge. They share whenever, SpaceX or something comes up with these new kind of rockets, this new ideas, they're kind of entitled to share those ideas with the government,
Right.
In case the government wants to make military shit out of it or whatever. So it's in everyone's best interest. It's awesome. I think we should be focused on space.
Yeah, me too. I
think we should be focused on mining in space.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where it's at.
What is there in abundance on Mars that would benefit us? Well, I guess we don't really know because we have to mine there, right? But is there anything?
Well, Mars
like
would be
we
way too
suspect
far
to have?
away. You would
talk about like more the moon then.
Asteroids.
Oh, touche, asteroids.
Yeah, you would mine asteroids. Ones that are already in close orbit to Earth. Because the most expensive part is not actually the mining.
Right.
It's getting there and then shipping the shit back.
Yeah.
If it costs more in rocket fuel to get the ore back to Earth than the ore is worth, sorry, the cat's scratching shit, then no one's going to do it,
Right.
She's really fascinated with
she has a bottle cap is what it is.
Sorry, folks. So yeah, it'd have to be cost beneficial. So you'd want to get as close as possible. So you'd want to start with asteroids.
Okay. I wonder how that would work, because a lot of asteroids that do orbit us only come, close to Earth, ever so often, and they get shot back out into space, and some of them have these really mass orbits. So I almost wonder, so it would have to be almost a mission to where it's like you get there and then it's like, all right, well, we have, 20 days until like you can't come back,
Right.
And then having to find a way to launch off of it again or finish up everything, and then God forbid if something goes wrong.
Let me grab
take
this
care
cat
of the
real
cat.
quick. One second.
She's a fucking mess, this cat. All day she just begs to come into my room so that she can sleep. And then she comes in here while we podcast, and she's like, now I'm going to make as much noise as I possibly can.
Alrighty. We are back in business.
Welcome back, Matthew.
So what were we saying now? What was the last thing we said?
Oh, fuck. Oh, we were talking about how you would only have a certain amount of time.
Right.
In orbit around.
So in a perfect world, you wouldn't send people to mine it. You would just send machines. It would be just like a drone, an unmanned drone. When it gets there, it would have little rovers that come out and mine.
Oh, touche. Yeah.
I guess, it could probably build a platform of some kind before it starts mining.
Right.
Use that platform as storage for the ore or whatever for that 20 days, or maybe it's a year. Maybe it's got to come back to where it was.
Right.
Whatever. And then at that time, be able to shoot the whole load back. It'd have to be some kind of self-contained system. That usually works best in space.
Touche.
People are like incredibly expensive to send to space, and they can die really super easily. So
yep,
we're not very super great.
Literally
at sending
everything
people.
around you could kill you.
Yeah, space is really, really deadly.
Literally, space is.
But robots do awesome. So
robots do great.
With solar power, they can go forever.
Speaking of like new technologies in the future and stuff, I was listening to a podcast today that had this scientist on there, this researcher, and I can't remember his name, but he was talking about humans in the future being able to genetically modify themselves,
Okay.
both before being born and after being born. And I didn't listen long enough. I was listening just on my way home from work to like how you exactly would go about doing that. But he was saying in like 10 years, like that would just be something that humans can just do. Like you can just go to like where people get plastic surgery, get bigger butts, boobs, or whatever. Now you can just go to a doctor and be like, I want red eyes.
Yeah.
And just be like, okay, well, here's red eyes.
Yeah, gene modification.
Oh, that's fucking crazy to me.
We actually did a podcast about this.
We talked a little bit about
a month or two ago.
Well, I just didn't realize it was that close. Like,
they literally
it to be like that close in our future.
So the whole deal is they built the machine. The machine that would do this, they have it.
Right.
They fucking built it.
The China guy.
And then they were like, well,
can't do this.
We can't test if it works because the only way to test if it works is to use it on someone.
Right.
And that would be unethical because we don't know if it's going to work or not.
Right.
This China guy was like, fuck you all, and just did it. He just tried it on these twins.
Yeah.
And supposedly it worked.
Right.
And then he announced it, and he ran away into hiding.
Well, it's not to say that
we literally have it.
Well, it's not to. My point necessarily wasn't that we already have the technology. It was because at first, the way that I saw this all playing out is the people that would have access, like the only way genetically modifying anything would be allowed would be in the case of like, I'm sure mounds of paperwork and then, the reasoning behind it. And it's probably gonna be used for strong medical reasons first.
At first, right? Yeah.
And then I thought it was like, okay, we're riding that train for a while before.
And then it'll become like plastic surgery.
Yeah, and then it becomes more common, becomes plastic surgery. But this guy was saying it's like plastic surgery in 10 years. And that was like what I meant. Like, I didn't realize how close we were to that. Like, oh, we're just going to jump straight to doing that kind of shit now.
Oh, I believe it. We're going to see a really huge paradigm shift in technology here soon. And they're building it in our backyard, dude. Yeah. I've talked about this once before on the podcast, but I don't know if people realize, but Intel is a huge maker of hardware for computers,
Right.
like the technology that goes inside of it, the chips, things like that. And they have a plant where they make the chips here in Arizona, close to where we live. Well, they're building another one of those. So this plant that's already there, I don't remember if it's 25,000 or 40,000, but that's how many workers are in it. So let's just say it's 25,000.
Okay.
They're literally building a duplicate right next to it, and they've been building it for at least 2 years now.
Yeah.
So that's coming around to being almost done in the next couple years. Well, I've also heard that there's technology now that I've talked about before where chips are going to be cubes here soon. So rather than pack more information into these chips, they figured out how to lay the chips on top of each other, in essence. And they don't go 1 + 1 + 1. They're exponential. So it's times itself, that answer, times itself, that answer, times itself. It's exponential.
Right.
I truly believe that in the next couple years here, very, very soon, we're going to see technology take a huge jump where it's going to be these cubes inside of it now instead of these chips are going to be like saying floppy disk.
Right. So what do you think that's going to mean for, just to use a common example, what do you think that's going to mean for like smartphones, for example? Like how will smartphones change with that kind of technology at our fingertips?
I think okay, think about it this way. They usually don't develop technology unless there is a cost benefit, unless there's already a plan in place to make money off of it, right? Because it costs a tremendous amount of money for R&D, for research and development. So they've spent all this money on R&D. They've already been doing it for the last 10 years. Well, what else have they been developing for the last 10 years? They've been developing virtual and particularly augmented realities.
Right.
Well, the limitations on those is processing power. Imagination is limitless. We can think of all these great things to do, but the machines we make, we don't have a computer strong enough. We got to make a shit ton of computers, tie them all together, and make them into one big ass computer so that it can run this augmented software, I guess.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Now they'll have a tremendous amount of processing power in one machine. And it's going to bring, I believe, augmented reality to the masses. That's the reason for it.
Okay. So it's going to be used more primarily for stuff like that than something like improving smartphones.
Well, you might
I mean,
you might have one technology go into the other.
Right. Like something more like glasses, kind of how Google
exactly.
Their Google Glass
I think
thing.
Carrying something in your pocket is going to be like what we say a pager now. Back in the day, pagers were badass. They were top notch. The Razor, remember the Razor? We were just talking about this the other day. That was a flip phone that was like a half inch thick.
Had, yeah.
But Snoop Dogg had it at the time, dude. It was the top notch, cutting edge.
Yeah.
You know, super fast. You could play Snake on it. Yeah. Well, it's gonna be caveman-ish to have a fucking computer in your pocket. I wear my computer, or I have contact lenses that are my computer.
Right. I think it may even become to the point to where how everybody has smartphones. I think if technology like that develops, it'll just be everybody wears glasses, right? And glasses will become a fashion statement amongst everybody, in those regards. But because I remember the Google Glass, the thing when Google Glass first came out, where I was like, "What the fuck?"
I got to play with a pair of those.
Did you really?
I did.
Tell me about it.
When I worked at UPS, I had a guy who shipped it. I didn't get to like wear it and use it like that, but I got to touch it and play with it and like check it out. And
so correct me if I'm wrong, but they're not really glasses as so much as like it's this. They're basically just frames you put on, and then there's like a little window in like the top corner, right? If I remember that correctly,
they were pretty bulky. They were bulkier than what you would think glasses. Yeah, no, there's no like glass lenses on them.
Okay.
No. It's more of a reflection going on, like a light reflection going on.
Okay.
But I remember them being more attuned to like sunglasses. Like they were bigger, bulkier. I don't know. They didn't seem at the time like something that would be practical
Right.
for everyone to wear. They seemed like a very niche thing to me.
Very much like if you have the money to spend, I'm going to try this fun toy.
Like if you're a big enough nerd, you would put that on. Like, because
Gotcha.
clearly everyone is going to know you have that on to nerd out.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
I see what you mean, yeah.
Like you're very obvious with it on.
Right.
So, and then all of a sudden it just went away. Like they just stopped developing it.
It was like it was a fad, and then the fad just died out.
It just went away. I don't know if it was like a law that got passed, like legislation that happened, or
well,
I don't know.
I knew some, but I don't think it was that. I think it was literally just the imagination surpassed the technology that we currently had available to us at the time. Because I did have a friend who did find himself. He was at like some like technology convention type of thing, right? So they were giving these for people to play with. And he put one on, and one thing that he said he just didn't like is, for one, he did speak about how it was like a little uncomfortable to wear. I'm assuming that's because it was bulkier. And two, because it's just this little window in the corner, it just became more of a nuisance than something that was practical. It basically, it's like if somebody texts you on your phone in this little box, it will just kind of tell you have a text message, and then maybe it will like scroll the text across the screen and stuff like that. But it requires you to take my attention off of you to notice in my peripheral vision that I have a text message, and just 100% draw my attention to that, which you really can't anyway because it's right in front of you, but it's in a corner. So it's just, I don't know. He just said it was weird, just wasn't practical.
I think it was very smart for them to pull it and not start selling it to the masses. I think they know. I think they know the power of the augmented reality. I think they know they already have a plan. They, being the major software companies, already have a plan of how they're going to brand it, how they're going to sell it, how they're going to charge us to use it. And they know it's the future. They know it's that next step that's going to launch them forward into being trillion-dollar companies instead of billion-dollar companies.
Oh, yeah. And I think that's why we'll get to a point to where, people will be able to wear glasses just like the glasses that you wear, but they're all going to be, in that augmented world.
You'll just manipulate things in the world around you.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Or even be able to do things like, because one thing I think is coolest about augmented reality as opposed to like VR is what we've been able to see with the tests and everything that they've shown on stages is, if you're wearing the augmented reality glasses and you just have a normal coffee table, but with your glasses, you're able to create, make Minecraft show up on this table, which is one of the tests that we saw. And then you're able to manipulate it and everything. And then if I, come out into the living room and then I see you messing with something that I can't see, all I have to do is put on my augmented reality glasses and I can now see exactly what you're seeing. That part is the coolest part to me, is that
we're going to find out that animals will be able to see it too, that certain shit's going to get affected by us doing it that we don't even know yet.
Well, and you're going to have this new kind of shift, and this is kind of what this guy was talking about, going back to like the genetic modifying, human beings, is right now we have this argument of food, right? Organic versus something that's filled with GMOs or pesticides or what have you, something that's artificially, made to be bigger, whatever it is. And we're going to see that shift with people. You're going to have organic people, and you're going to have people who like the new technology, and and you'll see it even with not just like genetically modifying anything, but you'll see it with like augmented reality. You'll have people who live in augmented reality, and you'll still see the hippies on Instagram going, glass, hashtag glass free, or whatever it is at the time. And you're going to have this two kind of fighting force with each other in people, where it's not going to necessarily be about what we eat anymore. It's going to be about what kind of world do you live in? Do you live in virtual one or a real one?
I think at first, definitely, you'll have the haves and have-nots for sure. But I think something like augmented reality, it's like saying electricity or the wheel or fire. I think that now changes mankind into, you'll have a couple generations
Right.
of Mohicans that don't use it and get by,
Right.
but it'll become like the internet or anything where you won't be able to not use it. You everyone will use it. It's
It's
almost like
almost like email. We were just talking about email the other day.
yeah,
You
it's
just kind of
almost
have
like
to
a
have it.
modern. I don't know if you would call it a natural selection
Mm-hmm.
or an evolution, but it's like having augmented reality would
Mm-hmm.
make you so far superior in that you could get
Yeah.
so much more done and be so much more efficient
Mm-hmm.
that to not have it, there would be no way to compare with someone who did have it.
Right.
So therefore, through natural selection, you're going to be weaker and you're going to be weeded out.
So
Not by death, but you're going to
right.
start choosing to use it because the other way of life will be weeded out.
Absolutely. I mean, we see that same thing with like the internet, for example, right? You
Right.
know, as in more of a broader scale than like just email. You know, it's sure you could choose to just not use the internet and do everything, you know, in person or be more personal and everything. But at some point, you know, you have to use the internet. It's
You have
just
to.
part of society
Or,
now.
or akin to cars versus a horse and buggy.
Yes.
You see zero horse and buggies on the road along with the cars.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I'm sure some people enjoy horses much more than they do
Yeah.
cars.
Well, and
If you want to travel, it's so much more efficient to do it in a car that
Exactly.
is now what society does.
And it's funny you bring up like the evolution and the natural selection because that was one of the arguments that are kind of being you know thrown out into the universe right now, whereas people are kind of misrepresenting what natural or like organic really is.
I think if people can make it, then it's natural.
Then it's natural, and that's
which would mean that the internet is natural.
is natural, and that's exactly what people are arguing right now. So it's like we look at these cities and the kind of technology that we have and everything, and we sit there and go, "Well, it's not natural." It's like, no, it's natural. That's
why
natural
it's developed
progression.
to this.
Yeah.
Yes, that's technology is very much natural. If we can make it, then it was supposed to be here. It was something that is. It's part of the rules. It's like when you play a video game. If it's in the game, then you can do it, right? It's part of the rules. Well, same thing with life and reality. Like the reason that we got to this point is these choices that we've made have led to success and life prospering, and the choices that did not lead to that are no longer here.
Yes.
And it's not just humans. Animals do that. Whether you believe in evolution, that people came from animals, that's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about is within a species, in order for that species to survive through time and changes, it has to adapt.
Yeah.
And you see it all the time.
Yes.
The strong survive. So technology is part of that, man. We're so far advanced to animals that we're humans. We're a different thing, and we create tools and technology.
So, what would you say then in kind of the argument of, because one thing we're trying to do right now is, you know, the Save the Planet movement, and that's, you know, a big part of that is save the animals, or a lot of animals are on the endangered species list. But just playing devil's advocate here, couldn't you argue that these animals that are on the endangered species list that are going extinct or becoming extinct because of our progression in society and in life, isn't that also natural? Isn't that
I
just...
think that is, yes.
I would think
that
so too,
it's
right?
the only reason that I don't know an example off the top of my head, but the only reason that an endangered species would continue to survive is through human intervention.
Right.
Is for us to create an artificial environment that is not natural, that mimics nature, but it's not natural. Put those species in that habitat and artificially keep them alive.
Yes.
Nature would wipe that fucking species out. Nature has wiped out bajillions of species. It's no big deal. Nature's created a lot of them too. They're a flick in the dust to nature.
So what about something like bees? being on the honeybees specifically, being on the endangered species list now, and we've heard, I haven't done crazy research into it, but I mean, we've all heard the arguments of like, if the bees go extinct, everything goes extinct, right? Or humans die or whatever it is, causes some big issue.
Well, and, they're the main, I think the argument is that bees are the number one pollinator
right
on Earth. Not the only pollinator, but the most abundant.
So, I mean, I guess that kind of answers because my question to you was just going to be, do you think we should be making strides to save the bees or just let
I think that
take its course?
When we fuck with it, when we try to intervene, we make it worse in the long run. I think that if nature is killing off the bees, okay, if there's an increase in some kind of toxicity on the planet due to whatever, right? There's a natural system in order, including us. Let's say the toxicity is carbon. Okay, I just didn't want to be specific. Right. But let's say we're spewing out some kind of toxin into the air and it's killing everything. All right. Mother Nature still has a system. So if nature can support that many humans, and that many humans can make that much waste, it means that nature can support that much waste. Otherwise, it wouldn't have supported the creators of the waste to begin with.
Interesting.
All right. So we got there. Now, help me out here. What was the original point that we were working on?
So just if we should like save a species from going extinct.
And it makes it worse when we do.
Yeah.
So if Mother Nature decides that the bees are dying, okay, and it doesn't decide that, but whatever's happening in the world is killing off the bees. At that same time, I think that the plants are going to start changing because the system now knows that there's an imbalance.
Right.
Okay. So when you artificially intervene and try to mess up that imbalance and make it balanced again, now the plants already started changing genetically, the way that they pollinate, let's say. Or another species of flying creature already started changing genetically, maybe to like pollen. Who knows? And because it sees the bees decreasing, now you come along, you bring the bees back. Mother Nature can't reverse these genetic changes that have already happened in these other creatures and species. So now you have a further imbalance. Do that over generations and generations and generations, and you no longer have nature. You have an artificial environment that humans are sustaining a balance in.
Interesting.
You see what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So, yeah, I don't think that nature would, for a super loose lack of terms, I don't think nature would allow itself to be destroyed by something that it creates.
So what about in terms of climate change then? Because the argument with climate change is that, we're basically causing the greenhouse effect here on Earth and making the Earth hotter in general. So would that be in that same kind of theory of like, well, we can't really destroy the Earth because the Earth created us and it can handle whatever it is that we do?
Yes, that's what I would think.
Interesting. So like what? So just theorizing here, what do you think would happen then as the like carbon dioxide levels are getting
I think
higher?
there would be an ice age.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it's a totally natural system.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think science is wrong. I'm not saying that science is wrong. They have very specifically mapped out what would happen.
We would just be making this particular ice age happen at this point instead of like nature doing it naturally. Well,
no.
I mean, I guess that's the argument.
I think it would have happened
change
either
in
way.
General, but
so, okay, where does the carbon come from? The carbon comes from us burning fuel. Right. The fuel, where does that come from? The fuel, and I'm not belittling you. I'm breaking it down mostly for viewers. The fuel comes from oil. The oil comes from the ground. The oil is created by biological beings, things that used to be alive that were particularly made out of meat. So animals that used to be alive that died. When they decomposed over millions of years, they become oil.
Right.
Okay, so basically they're the dinosaurs. They're everything from that time period that's decomposed. So no alien force came and squirted a bunch of black oil on our planet.
Right.
Okay, it's a natural substance. We will become oil one day. If you buried you in the backyard, your shit would become a couple of drops of oil in a million fucking years from now or whatever.
Circle of life.
All right. So that's in the ground. It came from the ground. It went back to the ground. you can't create or destroy energy. You can only change its
composition,
being, what matter it is. Mm-hmm. So that energy is now in the earth. It gets dispelled into the air. If it wasn't humans burning it, it would have come up through a natural source of the ground, the earth, the shell of the earth, the mantle moves. It's like lava on the bottom. The shit from the bottom comes up. The stuff from the top goes back down. It's like a rock cycle. So it would have got burned up in that cycle anyway, dispelled into the atmosphere somehow, and nature would have took its course. Humans are not adding any fuel to the fire. We're just burning the fuel that's around us.
Right. It's like we might be speeding. So it's almost an argument of we might be speeding up certain processes, but they're going to happen anyway. Because like in the argument of
they're going to happen anyway.
Yeah, like the Ice Age thing.
And I'm hesitant to even say that we're speeding it up. Because in the scaling of things, if we are speeding it up, it's not something that you would notice in even a lifetime. Right. In my opinion, I don't think that the amount that are us little specks on this floating rock in space, these little specks have enough combined matter to even make a difference. Right, you know what I mean? So, speeding it up, I guess, technically, but I'm hesitant that I even agree with that.
I feel you. And I definitely like have had those thoughts on, things with like climate change before, but I never thought about it on a level of like species, endangered species and such. And I mean, you're right. There are species that we keep alive, that end up dying out anyway, regardless if it's us or something else, that's doing it.
Yeah. And I mean, we talk about balance all the time, and I think most people are in agreement that there's some kind of balance to life and nature in the world, right? And if one species is dying, then why would you not think that another species is being born? You know what I mean? It's a system. If more things died than were born, that we would be finite. There would be no more fucking animals left. You know what I mean? Why do animals keep going? Because new ones come around.
Right.
They change.
Fucking world's crazy, man.
I'm also a little bit more jaded, I guess. Is a word term when it comes to the whole environment and climate change. Like if I see a picture of them cutting down the rainforest, I don't start crying. I don't go like, "Oh my Lord, we're gonna die." Like, no, you're good. More trees are getting planted,
right?
And the ocean makes most of our oxygen anyway. Read a book. It doesn't come from the trees; it comes from the ocean. So I'm not too worried about those kind of things.
I feel ya. I get that.
But
I definitely don't.
That's just me.
I definitely don't blame people who think that way. I'm always just like, to each your own.
I'm not in the majority though. I'm aware of that.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't even say that. I think it's literally just one of those things, that we see with, today and really our entire lifetime where, there are certain people who think certain things who just know to stay quiet, about it. It's like, because, and a lot of the times it's just because they know how the world's going to react to it, right? I mean, we've talked about this with like actors in Hollywood. There's conservative actors, but they don't talk about that.
Oh, you are definitely not supposed to say that when you see the rainforest being cut down, you're not bothered by it.
Yeah,
that is not a popular thing to hear. That is not what most people would write as their answer on a test.
You're not supposed to say you don't care about the environment. Everybody's supposed to.
I do care about the environment. I'm just not scared. I'm not worried that we're affecting the environment all that much. The one thing that I did watch a couple documentaries on, because Justin got into it, and it did bother me a little bit, is the fucking coral reefs, dude. The reefs in the ocean.
The sun bleaching that's happening and all that shit? Yeah.
So that, we might be speeding that up a little bit.
So what is...
That's a little bit... That's happening so fast that to me, it feels like even that is a little unnatural. The speed at which it's happening.
So is that why it bothers you? Just because it's happening so quickly?
Yes, the actual action of the bleaching of the coral, even if all the fucking coral on Earth died.
Right.
I'm not particularly bothered by that. What does bother me, though, is the amount of destruction that is so visible to the naked eye and the speed at which it's happening.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because that loops around back again to climate change.
I know. That's the only part that actually I get a little bit worried.
Of the climate change
I get a little
argument.
scared when I watch things about the Great Barrier Reef and shit. Dude, we wiped that fucker out. That thing's almost gone.
Which is crazy.
It's huge, Ad. I don't even know if you can understand. I didn't understand how big it is.
No, like I definitely understand how big it is.
It's like bigger than fucking Australia,
yeah,
dude.
exactly.
In
it's like
the
a little
ocean.
Continent
It's
is what it is.
huge.
Yeah.
And we have all but annihilated it. It's basically gone.
Yeah.
It's a little bit
disconcerting, right?
Well, the only thing that worries me is the balance. Is I don't know if something can come to life and replace it that quickly, to go along with my original theory here. We don't cut the forest down at the rate that we wiped out the reefs, dude.
No.
That shit got fucked up.
And what's funny is we deliberately were trying to cut down the trees. We weren't deliberately trying to kill the barrier reef.
It just happened.
That just happened. That was just a side effect of it.
But it also makes me think we've had ice ages before in history.
Oh yeah, we've had many.
That's proven. We have history. Yes. So
maybe that's just what happens.
I would only assume that there was a large amount of carbon dioxide in the air that led to a greenhouse effect that led to the ice age again.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I would only assume that if coral reefs existed back then, they were wiped out back then also.
Yeah.
And came back in some way.
Well, and what I think would end up happening is, because right now what you have is just the remnants of it, right? So it's called sun bleaching. So everything that was colorful and moving is all just like a skeleton now. Yeah, it's a white skeleton, exactly. And so I would argue that I bet those just stay there. All of that
why would they not?
Just exactly. Yeah. And then I think the second ice age is over, carbon dioxide levels go down. Well, now that they're just gonna be like, all right, well, we're back again, and here we are.
Or the shit deeper down survives, and then slowly through a couple generations brings its way back up towards the light. It's life is pretty resilient, man.
Yes, it is.
Life's number one goal is to stay alive, whether it's a human or an animal or a plant. If it's alive, the number one goal is to stay alive.
Yes.
Because the second that you're not doing that, nothing matters anymore. The first step to getting anything accomplished is to stay alive. So things are very, very good at doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, just an example, we look at babies. Oh, they're so fragile. Babies are resilient as fuck.
Oh, yeah.
They're resilient as fuck. You can drop those fuckers. They're fine.
And 100% instinctual. Have you seen the videos where they put like a newborn baby in not a newborn,
right,
but like a baby in a pool, and it just fucking knows to turn on its back and just fucking float there?
Well, it's even better than that, Adam. Your body is built in a way that it will do that. Your body will float naturally to the top.
Right.
Babies are balanced in a way that they will flip over. Their head is heavier than their butt.
But it's just that babies know, though. It's I don't know. It's just so so crazy to me.
They tell kids if you start drowning, just relax.
Yeah.
Just chill and just relax, and you'll naturally just float up to the top.
How fucking crazy. When I first watched one of those fucking videos and then putting this baby in a pool, face down.
Oh, it looks crazy, doesn't it?
It looks
It's
fake.
like you're going to fucking kill a baby.
It looks fake.
No, it's not.
When they turn around and everything, I'm like, oh, that's a fucking doll. They have a doll that little kids can play with that will just turn around in the pool for it. Like, no, it's a real fucking baby.
Yeah, their heads are super buoyant, so they flip over.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think an adult, though, will come up and your back will be up.
Oh, yes.
Because your head is proportioned to your body when you get older. But when you're little, you just fucking it's like nature knows.
Yeah.
It's like it knows. Or humans, like anything else, enough of them drowned that our genes changed and natural selection. We started having bigger heads.
Yes.
Who knows? I wasn't around back then. I don't know, but I would assume it's happened that way.
It's fucking crazy to think about.
Life is amazing. Think of like the sickest you've ever been, dude. Like I've literally been 106 degrees. I had a fever so bad when I was a kid. I was probably 8 or 9 or 10 that I was literally going in and out of consciousness. I was passed out. And one of the times I woke up, I was literally in the bathtub with water and ice. My parents were taking bags of ice and putting it in the water, and I was just laying in there. Like that's near death. You're literally a couple of degrees away from just being dead.
Yes.
And not only did I live, but I kept growing. I thrived, and look at me now. Like now I'm a healthy adult male. You would have never known that happened.
Right.
It's because
It's
the
crazy.
only choice is to live through it. Otherwise, nothing else matters.
Well, and it's and it's amazing going back to like the natural instinct thing that happens to, we were talking about babies with being able to turn around in a pool, but going back to like the being sick thing and our newly found knowledge in the past year about like fasting and stuff like that.
Oh, it's incredible. Autophagy, dude.
Yeah, autophagy. We know that's caused by fasting. If you don't eat it, your body reacts and heals itself. And then what happens when you get really sick? You lose your appetite. You no longer want food. Your
we
body
figured
puts
that
yourself,
out. Me and you figured that theory out in the backyard.
That's right. That's right. Blew our minds when
Blew
we
our
did
mind.
too.
We said, man, the first thing when you get sick, you lose your appetite. You don't want to eat, but you're fine, right? You go 2 or 3 days, you never get hungry, and you don't die. You don't get weak.
It's
You're fine.
literally your body trying to
It
repair
puts itself into autophagy.
Yes.
If you ever wonder, I used to wonder all the time, how the fuck did any of the Native Americans, how the fuck did any medieval people or how did they survive? How did enough of them live and not get AIDS or cancer or fucking die of the flu or their leg got stuck in something and they bled to death? Like, how did anyone make it this far? Literally, the answer is they didn't get sick because of autophagy.
Because they weren't eating.
If it's all diet. Diet is the answer.
Yep.
That is why people lived so long.
Yep. 100%.
And that is why we are so fucked up today with illnesses, dude. It's 100% diet.
Yeah. I mean, there was, I haven't been on any diet long enough to make this claim, but I've watched documentaries about, what people would consider extreme dieters. People who have lived on keto, for example, for like 20 years, right? They've lived nothing but a keto diet. And
you mean like a medieval person?
Medieval person.
Yeah, a medieval person had a keto diet. All they ate was vegetables and meat and water.
I guess technically, yeah. But in modern times, this woman was talking about how she started doing it because she had cancer, right? She had a tumor. We've already talked about how autophagy and fasting can cure certain types of cancers if it's in its early stage. But another thing not only did it cure her cancer, but she was talking about like, I have never been sick for 20 years. I haven't had a cold. I haven't had bad allergy attacks. I haven't had a flu.
No, your body will consume it. She gets those things. Those things enter her body.
But your body just fights
but
it
they're
off
immediately
so quick.
consumed. They're actually consumed, and you use them as energy. It's amazing.
It's fucking crazy, dude. It's out of just don't fucking eat for a few days every week, and you're gonna be the healthiest you've ever fucking been.
Please do a little bit of research before you just start doing that.
Yes, do that also.
Because you're gonna fuck your kidneys up if you just start doing that.
Listen to a few of our podcasts,
Just do your research, and you'll be fine. I promise.
There's so much out there about it now. And don't fucking cheat by getting fucking frappuccinos every fucking day. Okay, that's not a fucking keto diet. Sugar-free is not sugar-free. On that note, though,
we should stop. We should stop before we go any further. We're so passionate about diet, guys. We may not practice it all the time, but we're very passionate about diet.
Yes, because it's because we've all been on the diet at one point, and we know how good you feel.
It just affects everything.
It does. It does, guys.
And if you think we're wrong, prove us wrong.
Yeah, prove us wrong, please.
Fix your diet, eat healthy for a week, and prove to us that you don't feel better.
Yeah. let us know.
All right.
All right, guys, that brings us to time here. Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. Remember, you can follow us on all the social media platforms, and we also have a Patreon, www.patreon.com/hardlymillennial. And any final thoughts, Matthew?
We really do love you guys. We're just rough on you sometimes.
Yeah,
But it's because we love you.
It's tough love. Tough love.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye, guys.